Parents of Reddit, at what point did you realize you raised a monster? When he sold my car for drugs. Daughter wrote fuck you, and mama dies with her figure scratched out on a piece of paper the other day when we wouldn't let her make lemonade. She's 8. She's gone on rages and destroyed her room before, including throwing furniture around. Not looking forward to her as a teenager. My son asked me how long he was obligated to interact with me. Not my kid but niece. Went to the fridge, took a glass of orange, and dumped a massive amount of ketchup in it before proceeding to drink it. I couldn't sleep that night. Ex-teacher here. My own kids are far from monsters, but I've met some. When I taught preschool/kindergarten, there was a kid who was banned from YMCA camps for his behavior, and they had never banned someone before. He brought a plastic, thankfully, knife to school and threatened to cut all of us teachers. Told other kids he would burn their homes down after first setting fire to all their toys. He heard me calming another student who was afraid of bees and mentioning I'm allergic but have never been stung because I don't scare bees. He came up to me, told me he was going to put a wasp nest in my car, lock me in it, and watch me die. He was one of only 2 students expelled from that school in the 15+ years I was associated with it. His mother still didn't realize her son was a monster. She said she ate lead paint when pregnant with him, picker, but claimed he was just fine. Often parents just cannot or refuse to see their children for what they are. When my son's Tamagotchi died, and I was sad because I realized I was the one taking care of it while he was at school and in bed. When he got turned down for art school, I tried to be a good mother. Really I did. But looking back, the deck was pretty stacked against us from the start. Me and my son grew up poor, and I mean really, really poor, in the back end of nowhere. And I had to work all the time. I was basically a slave. I certainly got treated like one. For childcare, ha. Like I could afford that. I used to leave my boy with the owner of the local store, a fat Jewish guy I got to know. And he did his best looking after him in exchange for the little guy helping out. I suppose it was child labor. But what can you do? One day, I got lucky when some rich out of towner suffered a breakdown on the edge of town and came into the store looking for help. They were really impressed with my son's resourcefulness and know-how, and they were obviously upset at his potential being squandered, so they offered to fund his education. The only catch was it would have to be at boarding school, because there was no schools nearby worth a damn. I knew I would miss him like hell, but this was his big chance, and I jumped at it. But when he came back, God, he had changed. The next time I saw him, I'd been kidnapped by sand people, and my sweet boy who wouldn't hurt a fly when he was young killed every single one with the lightsaber some idiot had given him. Men, women and children. And he slaughtered them like animals. SMDH. I was in court as a plaintiff waiting for my case. They did all the criminal stuff first. One of the cases was this high school senior who had beat the shit out of his 100 lb 5 feet 0 inch mom. She was crying as she was refusing to have him home on bail. She was scared shitless of this kid. This was an upper middle class family and the kid looked like he was on his way to a good college. She kept saying he did it every time he didn't get what he wanted. Judge sent him to Monmouth County Jail. Not a nice place for an 18-year-old skinny nebbish. Not a parent but a sibling. My sister has become a vain, selfish, unloving sociopath. She treats my mum as a slave and my mum loves her too much to notice. My mum was talking to her. She got bored and said, quote back quote, "You can leave now." My mum replied with something like, "You can't talk to me like that. You need to respect me," to which my sister replies back quote, "I have no respect for the bitch that cleans my knickers. Leave." I'm in shock. If I said that to my mum I'd be slapped, but she turns a blind eye. The tentacles were a big giveaway. My son steals my wife's eyeglasses while she is reading on her phone. She can see up close fine, but anything past about 3 feet is a complete blur. He knows this. And knows he can get away with taking things off of counters and drawing on things if she can't see him. He's 3. Not my son, but there was a kid in the playground that my kid was playing with. He was about 5 or 6. If he didn't get his own way, he started screaming and hitting other kids at the playground. I advised my son not to play with him / talk to him, since he was being a little shit. Didn't say that to me, kid. The kid's mum was in the playground, but ignoring her son and loudly playing Pokemon Go. That kid is likely going to turn into a monster seemingly, since he is ignored. Hello. This is the story of my son Felix. I'm from Sweden, so I'm sorry if my English is bad. Felix is 6 years old and Julia is 4 years old in this story. I can start with an incident that made me wonder how I raised my son. So me, Felix and his younger sister Julia, we're on a camping trip through the north of Sweden when my son from nowhere just starts to scream, "I will kill you, Julia," and after he starts to pray to God. No one in my family is religious and that is what makes me feel uncomfortable. I ask him, "Felix, what's going on?" And he answers, "Julia wouldn't let me play with her hair." The whole trip I would always check out what Felix was doing, because I could just feel his anger of something, but couldn't put my finger on what until 5 years later, 2017, when the same thing happened again. Me and my wife had just picked up the kids from school and let them play upstairs while we are cooking food. And then from nowhere we heard the loudest scream saying, "I will kill you, Julia." So I ran upstairs as fast as I could. When I came up to the room my kids were playing and I saw my daughter laying on the floor bleeding from her hair. And beside her my son is sitting praying to God with blood in his hands. I was so confused. My son had pulled so hard in his sibling's hair that she had lost hair and started bleeding. That is the most creepy thing I've seen in my whole life so far. When I ask my son what he has done, he answers to me with most chilling voice I ever will hear, "Julia wouldn't let me play with her hair, Dad." About 2 weeks after the incident I asked Felix why he pulled her hair. He said, "The man in my head tells me what to do. I can't choose what to do. My son is getting help and my daughter is fine." I'm not done raising her, so I still hold on to hope that we can turn things around. My middle child is 10. She becomes completely uncontrollable when things are not going her way. She tells me she hopes I die. She has told me that she is going to go to school and tell them I beat her so she can go to foster care. Her older sister struggles with depression and cuts herself. She often tells her she hopes she kills herself. She hopes she cuts too far one time. She will go outside and scream at the top of her lungs. She has hit me, spit in my face, breaks things, destroys the house. My ex-husband was extremely abusive towards me. They saw him beat and rape me. It was very, very bad. Once we were divorced, he was court-ordered visitation. It wasn't so bad at first. He mostly just dumped them off on his family members. But as they got older, his drug abuse and untreated mental issues got worse. He turned his abuse towards them. He never hurt them physically, but the mental abuse was there. They haven't seen him in over 2 years. I told the judge I would go to jail before I'd allow them near him again. They both had a pretty rough childhood. I'm a recovering alcoholic, so my own issues played into it. I was never abusive, but I was definitely not there for them like I should have been. I was more of a friend than a parent. I'm sober now. We are all in therapy. I really hope that, by doing these things, that we can make things right. I haven't given up. I still have hope. But it's really hard sometimes. My little brother is autistic. Love him to death. But growing up he had no idea about morals. We had a portable DVD player as kids with a load of DVDs and a couple of Nintendos. He loved them and would always giggle watching them, but one day, when he was 4, he thought it would be hilarious to throw them all out of the window and smash them. Another time when we had moved houses, a stray cat was always wandering around. We fed him and sprayed him, and our grandmother adored him. I think my brother would have been 6 or 7, but we walk into the garden to see him swinging the cat by its tail in circles, giggling in fits. Now that he's older he'll still kick up and have fits, but at least he knows what things are bold. In public he always pretends like he doesn't know me, and at home I only see him if he is hungry. I recommend to not get a cat, because mine is an asshole. He coming through the door screaming and holding a bag of candy, and I said, "Daniel, stop eating that shit, you gonna rot your teeth." and he piffed one right at my face. I look at him out my other eye, and he has this look like oh shit, and ran for it, and I said in gonna whoop you Daniel you shithead, and he jit in his car and drove home. So I called him, leave a message. Shit Daniel, I'm at the emergency room for my eye, but it was a trick. When we got to the hospital I was still at home eating chips. My sister is raising two monsters. My niece and nephew. The whole family knows. Even their parents know, but neither one of them wants to be a parent and discipline or give consequences for their monsters' actions. My nephew at 7 yelled at my sister at Subway when she asked him to pick out his chips. He screamed, "Shut up you bitch. I want to fucking choke you." Then proceeded to kick the customer nearest him in the back of the leg. My sister just laughed it off with a defeated, embarrassed look on her face. At my daughter's 3rd birthday party, my niece, 8 at the time, realized she was wearing the jeans she doesn't like, screamed over the birthday song at her parents, told them to fix it immediately. Well, they couldn't. They had no change of clothes. She flipped out, grabbed the birthday cake and threw it on the ground, then ripped her pants off, threw a present on the ground, and stomped all over it. No apology, no consequences. My sister offered to pay to replace the gift. I told her I'd rather she pay to send her kids to therapy. She called me a cunt and said I didn't love my niece and nephew. They're in their teens now and still throw fits if you don't do what they want or let them win, etc. When my brother had his son, Monster nephew started beating him up around 3. Monster was 9. Monster gave the little boy a black eye. Only time he got his ass kicked, and after that it stopped. And the only people my monster niece and nephew are genuinely scared of and behave around are my African American sister-in-law and my Mexican brother-in-law. They've never done anything to them. They're just not white. Anyway, we have secret family get-togethers without inviting them because they always ruin them. We honestly don't like living like this, but we also don't like spending X amount of hours listening to them whine, bitch, scream, and demand things while breaking and destroying our property, and you can't say anything to them and their parents won't say anything. It's upsetting. I dread their future.